The world is no longer on the brink of war. It is engulfed in a global conflict that was triggered not by a quest for democracy, but by a cold-blooded calculation over the flow of energy. Operation Epic Fury has transitioned from a surgical strike on nuclear sites to a full-scale assault on Iran's energy heartland. In the early hours of this morning, U.S. and Israeli fighter jets launched more than 900 strikes across 24 Iranian provinces, specifically targeting the Shakran oil depot and refineries that supply more than 50% of the nation's energy. This is a war of attrition designed to bankrupt a civilization that has survived for 2,700 years. While the official narrative focuses on neutralizing a nuclear threat, the dark secret lies in the administration's plan to seize Iranian oil reserves to stabilize a crashing global market. The fallout was instantaneous. Brent crude oil prices surged by 20% in a single day, reaching toward $91 a barrel. Analysts warn that if the Strait of Hormuz remains blocked, we are looking at $150 per barrel. A scenario that would shatter the global economy. In the middle of this chaos, the unthinkable has happened. Two Israeli sources and the American president have confirmed that the supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei is dead. He was neutralized alongside 40% of his top commanders in a coordinated decapitation strike that hit his compound in downtown Tehran. However, decapitation has not brought surrender. Iran has responded by activating its Mosaic defense system, a decentralized warfare doctrine that allows local commanders to fire at will without central orders. Within hours of the strike on Tehran, Iran launched Operation True Promise for firing hundreds of ballistic missiles and suicide drones at U.S. military bases in Bahrain, Qatar, and the United Arab Emirates. The headquarters of the U.S. Navy Fifth Fleet in Bahrain was hit directly, and the state of emergency has been declared as smoke rises over the horizon. This is no longer a localized skirmish. It is a regional conflagration where civilian infrastructure has become the primary target. The veneer of safety in cities like Dubai and Doha has been shattered as drones explode near international airports and luxury hotels. The U.S. State Department has issued urgent evacuation orders, telling thousands of citizens to leave via commercial means, even as those very airports come under heavy fire. While the American public was told this was a mission of national security, the dark truth of a global energy seizure is surfacing. Top officials have now admitted that the long-term objective is to move Iran's massive oil reserves out of the hands of what they call terrorists. This is a strategic gamble of unprecedented proportions. The White House is effectively betting that short-term economic pain will be outweighed by the total control of the Middle East's energy taps. But the cost of this gamble is being paid in American blood. 6 service members were recently returned to Dover Air Force Base in flag-draped coffins after a drone strike on a makeshift facility in Kuwait. These soldiers did not die in a vacuum. Intelligence reports now confirm that Russia has entered the fray, providing Iran with real-time targeting information from its space-based surveillance network to hit U.S. assets with surgical precision. This revelation has turned a regional conflict into a shadow world war, with Moscow actively assisting in the killing of American troops to protect its own geopolitical interests. Simultaneously, the Islamic Republic has shown the world it is not ready to crumble. In an act of pure defiance, the Assembly of Experts has named Mojtaba Khamenei, the son of the late leader, as the new supreme leader. He is a hardliner who oversaw the crushing of internal protests and is known as a powerful shadow influencer within the deep state. Instead of a moderate bridge to the West, Spiel's Washington has catalyzed the rise of an even more aggressive wartime leader who refuses to even entertain the thought of surrender. While the administration claims Iran's military is a non-factor, the reality is a grinding war of attrition. The United States has already seen 4 of its billion-dollar THAAD air defense systems destroyed by inexpensive suicide drones. It's an economic asymmetry that is bleeding the Pentagon dry. The Strait of Hormuz, which once carried 20 million barrels of oil daily, now sees practically zero traffic. This is a de facto closure that has crippled global shipping, forcing major insurers to cancel policies and send prices spiraling into the unknown. The world is no longer just watching a war. It is suffering through a systemic collapse orchestrated in the name of oil dominance. The strategic pressure is mounting as the United States military surges a third nuclear supercarrier, the USS George H.W. Bush, into the conflict zone to join the USS Abraham Lincoln and the USS Gerald R. Ford. This massive concentration of naval air power represents the largest deployment since the invasion of Iraq in 2003. While the Pentagon claims this is about rotation and fresh airframes, the logistical reality points to a war that the administration expects to last through September rather than the 4 weeks initially promised. The dark secret fueling this escalation is the total seizure of Iranian energy assets to stabilize the American economy. Yet the short-term fallout is a humanitarian and environmental nightmare. In Tehran, massive fires at the Shakran oil depot have created an apocalyptic scene where thick black smoke has mixed with rainfall, resulting in a toxic black rain falling over 17 million people. Iranians are being told to stay inside their homes not just to avoid the bombs, but to escape the suffocating pollution caused by the destruction of their own energy grid. The regional price of this oil-driven strategy is expanding by the hour as Iran's military ignores its own president's calls for de-escalation, even after President Masoud Pezeshkian apologized to Arab neighbors. Hardline Iranian units and rogue commanders have continued to launch waves of drones and missiles at civilian hubs. A suicide drone recently slammed into a terminal building at Dubai International Airport, the busiest hub in the world, while another struck a government social security building in Kuwait City. This is part of a deliberate drizzle strategy designed to drain the defense stockpiles of Israel and the United States. The Pentagon has already spent nearly $11 billion in just the first 4 days of the campaign, with over $5 billion burned through on expensive interceptors used to shoot down inexpensive $20,000 drones. This economic asymmetry is a significant problem that could turn into a full-blown munition crisis within the next 2 weeks. While the administration boasts about an unlimited supply of munitions, the reality is a desperate scramble to quadruple production as stockpiles hit critical lows. The world order is cracking under the weight of an energy war that has no clear end in sight. As the bombs fall, a more silent and insidious war is being won through the complete penetration of Iran's national security by the CIA and Mossad. For 10 years, Israeli intelligence had hacked the traffic camera feeds of Tehran, mapping the daily routines of top officials through a process called pattern of life analysis. This digital leash allowed military planners to know exactly when and where the leadership would gather, leading to the devastating daytime strike that caught 40 top commanders off guard during the holy month of Ramadan. This was not just a failure of defense, it was a total breach of Iran's sovereign armor. Today, a viral joke circulating in intelligence circles claims that whenever 3 Iranian leaders meet, 2 of them are secretly working for Mossad. The internal structure of the Islamic Republic is now fracturing as the regime turns its weapons on its own citizens. The Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps and state intelligence services have issued chilling warnings that any civilian caught on the streets will be killed, driven by an overwhelming paranoia that the population is filled with foreign agents. This fear is not unfounded. In an unprecedented move, ordinary Iranians who can still access the internet are publicly sharing the GPS coordinates of secret Revolutionary Guard hideouts, inviting U.S. and Israeli strikes to eliminate the forces that have oppressed them for decades. This internal civil war is the dark underbelly of the oil strategy. As Washington realizes that regime change cannot be achieved from the air alone, but through the systematic collapse of the government's legitimacy. Amidst this leadership vacuum, the selection of Mojtaba Khamenei is being framed as an act of ultimate defiance against the West. Though President Trump has branded the new leader a lightweight and signaled that he must have a say in Iran's future, the hardline military factions are closing ranks to prevent a total surrender. They are doubling down on a mosaic defense strategy, splitting the country into 31 independent military units authorized to continue the war even if the central command is vaporized. However, this decentralized approach has backfired. As rogue commanders launch unauthorized attacks on neutral neighbors like Turkey and Azerbaijan, further isolating Iran on the world stage. The conflict has now moved beyond oil to the most precious resource in the Middle East: water. After U.S. strikes hit a major desalination plant on Keshem Island, depriving 30 villages of water, Iran retaliated by targeting Bahrain's water infrastructure. This is the endgame of a strategy that targets the very survival of 90 million people. The global economy is now staring down the barrel of a multi-trillion-dollar collapse as the dark secret of Washington's oil strategy hits a brick wall of reality. While the administration initially claimed the war would be funded by seized Iranian energy wealth, its first 100 hours of military operations alone have cost the American taxpayer $3.7 billion. This spending, which amounts to nearly $891 million every single day, is almost entirely unbudgeted and has forced the Pentagon to beg Congress for emergency funding. The stock market is in a freefall, with South Korea's exchange suffering a 10% crash and Japanese markets following suit as the world realizes the Persian Gulf is now a logistical black hole. The most terrifying realization for Western planners is the rapid depletion of high-tech munitions. The United States is literally running out of the interceptors needed to defend its regional assets. At the current rate of fire, defense analysts predict that interceptors in the United Arab Emirates could be finished within 1 week, while Qatar's may be exhausted in just 4 days, leaving U.S. carrier strike groups vulnerable to Iran's remaining ballistic arsenal. This has triggered a desperate meeting between the White House and executives from Lockheed Martin and Raytheon to quadruple production of the exquisite class of weaponry. Meanwhile, Iran is using a drizzle strategy, firing inexpensive drones and missiles at a slow, steady pace to force the U.S. to burn through $2 million interceptors to stop $20,000 targets. This war of attrition has effectively ended the era of cheap energy. For the first time in 80 years, the Strait of Hormuz is functionally closed, with practically zero traffic reported by major oil companies. This has trapped $25 billion worth of cargo and paralyzed oil exports from Kuwait and Qatar. Russia has capitalized on this chaos by stepping in to fill the energy gap, dumping unsanctioned oil into Asian markets and using the proceeds to fund its own military interests. As gas prices in the United States climb 43 cents in a single week, the public is turning on the administration. Polls show that 51% of Americans now strongly disapprove of the military action, seeing it as a reckless gamble that has brought the global economy to the brink of a structural catastrophe. The central question haunting global capitals tonight remains whether this military gamble was a strategic masterstroke or the biggest mistake of a political career. Washington now finds itself cornered by its own escalation. Realizing that Iran is not a repeat of Venezuela, but a nightmare scenario similar to the decades-long quagmire in Afghanistan, the initial calculation of a 4-day battle has evaporated, replaced by a war of attrition that the Pentagon is now quietly planning to sustain through September. The economic fallout is no longer a projection. The cost of just the first 4 days of operations reached $11 billion. It's a staggering sum for a conflict with no clear exit strategy. With the Strait of Hormuz 90% closed and traffic reaching almost zero, global oil markets are pricing in a systemic collapse that will be felt by every American at the pumping station. The humanitarian failure is absolute. From the 140 people killed at the Minob Girls' School to the toxic black rain falling over the 17 million residents of Tehran, the moral high ground has been completely decimated. While the administration claims the United States has an unlimited supply of munitions, the emergency meetings with defense contractors to quadruple production prove that the high-tech shield of the West is being drained by inexpensive drones. Even as Mojtaba Khamenei takes power in an act of defiance, showing the world that the Islamic Republic remains a million-man force under arms, the United States is preparing for a potential ground invasion that 60% of its own citizens disapprove of. This is a war of choice that has unleashed unpredictable and uncontrollable consequences, redrawing the map of the Middle East in blood and oil. The dark secret of an energy-driven strategy has triggered a global conflagration that neither the United States nor Israel may be able to control. As three carrier strike groups converge on the region and Russia provides targeting data to Iranian forces, the world is witnessing the violent end of the old order. Whether the regime survives or collapses into a failed state, the price of this oil strategy will be paid for a generation, proving that in modern warfare, the most expensive weapons cannot always defeat a determined resilience. The world is indeed shaken, and as the bombs continue to fall, we are left to wonder if anyone actually knows how this ends.